Welcome back to Burn the Ship, the podcast we connect entrepreneurs and professionals to help you go all in on your business. Without further ado, I'm your host, Ezra Brown, and I wanted my guest to introduce himself.
Hello, how you doing? My formal title is Dr. Earl Levingston, and I'm the owner and director of operations at InStructure, and that is a professional development company.
That's awesome. Dr. Listen, kind of tell us a little bit. All right. Well, you got a big title there, so that means a lot of schooling. But this journey had to start somewhere, and kind of what's it been like for you? Tell us the scope of it.
Well, the scope is pretty much, and I'll try to make a long story short, but it's some depth to it and some layers. So, when I
Let's
was
start
un-
peeling.
when I was an undergraduate, I read this book, and it was called "The Miseducation of the Negro" by Carter G. Woodson, who is actually the father of Black history, considering this is Black History Month. And the crux of this book was like, in order to obtain real wealth, you have to own your own business.
Right.
That's the way. Not working for someone is the way to kind of achieve real wealth. And so I always knew that. But I was also an educator. And educators, as we know, are undercompensated at every level, right?
Right.
Undercompensated. So
Absolutely.
so I taught K through 12. I was a coach. I coached everything: baseball, basketball, football, taught swimming, and
Trying to get that stipend, that extra little bit.
well, but I was doing it before. So before I even got the stipend, I was a volunteer coach. That's how I kind of cut my teeth in the actually coaching got me into teaching, because in order to coach a lot of places in different states, you have to be a teacher at the school. So
Right.
that's what actually got me, fully in. But once
Right.
I walked into a classroom the first time I was there, I knew I belonged. I'm like, this is it. I never felt like I was working when I was in front of students facing.
Right.
So
Right.
anyway, so I go back, I get my master's degree, I graduate with a master's in history in 2007 in December. And remember, in 2008, we had a huge economic crush. I mean, I was bilingual at the time. I
Mm-hmm.
had about 5.5 years of teaching experience, coached everything, and I couldn't get a job at Walmart. And I had lived abroad twice before, and I love that opportunity because I'm a culture guy. I love culture, even my research. I do a lot of
Right.
ethnography, and that's like
Yeah.
the study of culture.
That's a
So
conversation for a
I
different day, and
started
I'd like to have it.
absolutely. So I start looking for different opportunities overseas, and so I find out that I wanted I lived in Mexico and the Dominican Republic, so I understood kind of something about Latin American culture. And I said one of the few cultures that I don't understand is Asian culture, and so I chose to go to South Korea. But what I find out is that when I get this, I find out that most people want to be professors there because of the schedule that you
Mm-hmm.
have in South Korea. It's like you're literally off for 5.5 months and you get paid, and it provides you an opportunity to travel and see different things. Your schedule is really lax.
Really?
Oh yeah, I was teaching my classes when I was in South Korea.
Hmm.
Like, just my schedule, I taught maybe four no, no, I'm sorry, I taught two classes a day for 4 days out of the week, and those classes were 100 minutes, and after that I was done. And so
That's
everything I
crazy.
made on yeah, everything I made on top of that was extra. Like, one of my assignments, like for extra money, I would go to the hospital and teach the doctors how to present in English, because they would have to go to a lot of conferences abroad.
Right.
Because I taught at a top 10 university, which is an Ivy League school in South Korea. It was called Busan National University.
Yeah.
The higher paid professionals would hire me to come into their houses and teach their children English.
That's awesome.
So it was a great time. But while I was there, most of the teachers and most of my friends who were in South Africa, they didn't work at universities. They worked at kind of like a Hagwon, that's kind of like an after school learning program, and they worked in elementary schools, and they had no teaching experience. So I was with my friends one night. We're at a bar and we talking, and one of my friends, she was from Canada, and she was complaining. She was like, the kids won't listen. They won't do this. They won't do that. And I said, hey,
Right.
do this, this, and this. And so about a week later, she comes back and she was like, Earl, whatever you told me, it worked. I said, yeah, I'm a real teacher. I understand pedagogy. I know how to teach for real.
Right.
And so she ends up becoming the director of a university. And so she was like, hey, Earl, remember that thing you taught me about differentiating and instruction? And I said, yeah. She said, would you come train my professors? She said, now I can't pay you a lot. And they paid me literally like $50. And
Right.
I came in and I trained those professors, and I absolutely had a ball. I'm like, I do this for free. I'm like, this was
Right.
fun. And
Right.
one of the things, that one of my family members, my sister, always told me, she said, do what you love because you'll be able to do it for a long time and you will put everything into it. So that's what I did. So my university heard that I was giving workshops across town. They said, "Hey, you giving workshops across town? You better give one here." So I gave one there. Another school heard about it, and so I went to that school and gave one there. And so one of my Korean friends, she was like, "Hey, you need to get a business license if you're gonna do this." And I said, "Yeah." And I said, "I do this for free." So what I did is I got my business license, and I ended up actually having the opportunity to go to Southern Africa to
Yeah.
provide workshops there. I presented at University of Swaziland in Swaziland, Africa. Um,
Hmm.
I I showed up there. I was supposed to talk to one classroom of students, and when I got there, and they found out they had an American on campus, they had to move it to the main auditorium so all of the education majors can come. I have pictures of it and everything. When I say it was like my top rated presentation I've ever given in my life, it was so much
That's
energy
incredible.
that I gave in there. So
Nerves were going a little bit.
yeah. So also, while I was there, I was supposed to speak at the University of Western Cape, and everything was fine. We did everything online, and when I got there, they found out I didn't have a PhD, and they didn't allow me to speak, and that really got my goat, And I was like, you know what? I said no one will ever not include me because I don't have
Hmm.
an academic credential, and I was,
Right.
and it's kind of the responsible thing to do. If you're going to train teachers, you should have the highest academic credential. You really should.
Yeah, yeah, and if you really look at it, yeah, like from a big scope, from like a 360 foot above, yes. But if you're looking at it from like 2 feet down, or actually flip vice versa. Let me flip that vice versa. 2 feet up, it's you need that, but you get way up here, you're like, no, no, you don't, because that same person with the doctorate might not be able to effectively talk to somebody like you were.
True, absolutely. But when you're training teachers, one thing about academia, what matters in academia and academic settings, academic credentialing. That really matters. It matters
Right.
in that specific space. So when I walk into a school, like typically if I'm coaching or if I'm somewhere, I don't ever give my title Dr. Levingston. Never.
Right.
But if I'm in an academic environment, it's mandatory because that states that you are an expert in this field and that
Right.
warrants your voice and your power in that field, and it's acceptable in higher ed and in other K through 12 locations.
Yeah, that makes absolute sense. Yeah.
So it's not like a bargaining tool or a chip to say I'm better than you. It just says, hey, I'm the expert. This is what I
Absolutely.
studied to do, and this is
Absolutely.
like I'll give you an example. If you're flying on a plane, right? Let's say you've taken a flight. You've taken a flight before, right?
Oh yeah, all the time.
Would you want somebody who's never been trained to fly a plane, who fixes tires to fly that plane, who's never been trained to doing it?
Absolutely not. I fly them, so no.
Yeah, you will want the expert. You want the person who's
Right.
been trained to exactly. And so
Yeah. No.
that's what I mean by expert, not to
Absolutely.
demean anybody or make anybody feel lesser than. But typically, you always want experts when you're dealing with certain areas. So nevertheless,
For sure.
I come back to the United States. I end up getting into a PhD program. I get into the PhD program, and while I'm in the PhD program, I start seeing a space. I start seeing a space that I might be able to fit into. So I was
Right.
training to because I have a background in history. I have 2 degrees in history. I have an undergraduate in history and a master's in history. And
That's
actually, I was
awesome.
training teachers on how to teach history. And it's
Hmm.
another funny caveat. And this is something you might want to look at. But
Oh
you
yeah.
know, you know that most coaches are history teachers. Think about your
You know.
coaches.
Oh, trust me. It's like whenever you got a yellow car, you see yellow cars all the time.
Yeah.
I'm a history guy, so like that was always like that was the only thing I liked at school. Like I'm uber good at math and science, but I loved history. Terrible at language, terrible at reading and writing. Always was. Like that was always a bad thing until I got to college. They had to teach me how to do it, pretty much. But history was always my favorite thing. I was always really good at it as well. But it was something that interested me. Like I would sit up in class, my ADHD would like focus on what was going on, and then all my teachers were always coaches.
It's and it's funny, and that's and I really want to do some research on that because I lived in
Yeah.
Texas for a while, and it's the same way. It was like, when I would, I would, when I was teaching at the university, teaching students
Right.
methods of teaching social studies.
Yeah.
It was just the sound of my voice and the way I moved. They said, "You coached before, didn't you?" And I'm like, "Yeah." They said, "Yeah." They said it makes sense. They said most of my history and social studies teachers were coaches, and this is what I wanted to teach. I didn't want to be a PE
Right.
teacher because I remember being in high school, the coaches I respected taught like a subject. They taught English,
Right.
or they taught history or something. Those
Yeah.
are the ones I respected the other athletic coaches. But if I had a serious question about college
Didn't
and
even think
life,
about it. Didn't even think about it in that way. I didn't even think about it like that at all. But I definitely was like that. It 100% was.
yeah.
That that makes a lot of sense because I didn't ask my head coach anything like that. Yeah, because
So
he was a PE guy, but I'd ask my guy that was teaching, Coach Neal, which is now the head coach at a bigger and better school. It makes sense now, and there's why he's there versus this discipline.
yeah. So, bringing it around, while I was teaching classes, they gave me these diversity courses. It was one called Exploring Diversity. I don't like the name of it, but that was one of the first courses I taught. And
Right.
then they had another one called Teaching Diverse Populations. So the school that I was at and the students I had in education, it was about, I would say about 95 to 99% white students. And so we would get into these conversations about race, and it
Right.
was so much that they didn't know. Not about so much, people like to talk about the impact of what race is, but not actually what it is, right?
Right.
There are a couple ways to get out of it. Oh, I'm colorblind, or oh, race is a social construction. We're all the human race. And that gives you an out. Hey, so we don't have to talk about it anymore, right?
Yep.
So while I was in this class, I was noticing how limited their knowledge was. And so I started
Mm-hmm.
asking questions. And I'm like, okay, what subject? So when we look at the cycle of talking about, race, I would ask, I
Absolutely.
said, okay, let's think about your upbringing, right? Who did
Mm-hmm.
you learn your perceptions of race? Not the impact, but what it is. Who'd you learn that from? Your
Mm-hmm.
parents,
Your
right?
parents.
23% of all Americans don't have a college degree. Doesn't make you smarter, but it just
Mm-hmm.
means that you haven't furthered your education to get into these
Right.
different topics, right? Then
Right.
you get to the K through 12 system, and I would ask a question. I would say, hey, what subject did you learn what race was in? Did you learn it in biology? Did you learn it in history?
Mm-hmm.
Where'd you learn it? And so they're looking around at me,
Right.
and I said, all right, now you're in service. You're in the university. When have you learned what race is? Right? And so everybody looking at me, and I'm like, I found the lane. I found the space. And so I started incorporating this to what I was. Not the impact, but actually what it is.
Mm-hmm.
What are the perspectives of it? Because when I teach, and I always tell students, there is no right or wrong in this class. There's only
Right.
perspective. There's perspective,
Absolutely.
and there's your ethos, your background, what you know
Mm-hmm.
from your
Mm-hmm.
background. And so we'd have these great discussions, and it was a lot of learning going on. And so I said, hey, why don't I start a company? Why don't I, restart my company in the United States, and I can have two houses. I can work with this area of diversity, equity, inclusion,
Mm-hmm.
and on the other side, I can work with like pedagogy and culturally relative
Yep.
education, autoethnography, and so I would have two houses that I could work with and train teachers in professional development and in
Absolutely.
businesses. So 2018 happens. I graduate. I'm a hot scholar. Like literally, I was offered 5 positions, and me and my
Mm.
wife were both academics,
Mm-hmm.
and so we traveled together. They call it a spousal hire. But every place that I went didn't have a position for my wife, and she had
Mm.
tenure, so I couldn't take any of those positions. And I'm a believer in Christ, and I thank Christ for all the opportunities that I have and I'm
Absolutely.
gonna have.
Mm-hmm.
And so I said, wait a minute. I even wrote in my
Amen.
dissertation that I was going to start my own business and be loosely affiliated with a university. I put it in my dissertation, so I wrote it down. Right.
Mm-hmm.
I forgot to be more specific and say extremely lucrative. So
Right.
anyway, or fast acting, or
Missed on that one, but that was all good.
so anyway, so I'm sitting there and I'm like, you know what? This is what I said I'm going to do. So this is what I'm doing. So I started my own business. and I was living in Texas, and I started to begin to go out and give trainings. I would give them at churches. I gave one at my son's pediatrician's office. I would get referrals even from, professors at the university. I did trainings at our university. It's a 40,000 student university with 5,000 faculty and staff. And I
Right.
started providing training. And one of the jobs that I actually got right before we left, I did a training on inclusive education for the Mayborn College of Journalism.
Mhm.
And I get an email. It's like, hey, could you give me a call? And I'm like, I'm interested in obtaining your services. And I'm like, sure. So I call, and it's a law office. It's a law office, and one of the partners of the firm was like, hey, my name is such and such, and my husband came back from your training today, and he couldn't stop talking about you. She was like, my husband hates professional development and he hates training, and a lot of people do. They don't like
Right.
PD,
Absolutely.
right? And there's a reason for that. And if we have time, I'll get into it. And
Yeah.
she said, he won't stop talking about you. And I said, really? She was like, I know you work for the university, but I said, actually, I have my own LLC. And if you call me at this number and email me here, I can definitely help you out. And so actually, I ended up training three of their office. I did a training. I trained in Dallas, I trained in Plano, and then I trained in their office in Austin, Texas.
That's crazy. That's awesome. All off of just what you were doing, and how you've learned to, I guess, communicate to people, and I guess effectively hit the right places, to where it works. You know what I mean?
Well, the thing is you have to be able to meet people where they are. And that gets
Right.
back to the professional development space. Now, I don't know what your background is, but here's what I'll tell you typically how it works with professional development. They come in and they say, hey, this is what we're doing. Right? Now, me and you are talking. If I just
Mm-hmm.
walked in and shoved a cheeseburger in your face, maybe you'd like it, maybe you wouldn't. Maybe you're a
Right.
vegetarian. Maybe you're trying to lose weight. Maybe you got high cholesterol. I don't know anything about you.
Yeah. No, that
So
makes sense.
So what I do is I created something, and it's called a professional development learning profile. And so what
Mm-hmm.
I do now is I go into schools and I go into businesses, and because I'm a researcher, PhD is a research degree.
Yeah.
I go in and I collect data on your organization. I collect data on your staff. That includes focus groups. I find out what motivates them to want to learn. I find out what they want to learn. I find out how they learn. I get other demographic information, generational information. I go so detailed as I find out what do you want to eat during our professional development session.
Right.
And I get that information together. I compile it. I use research tools. I've created a tool. I compile that data. And so now when you're going to have professional development, I consult. When you bring somebody in, I said, okay, here's our profile. This is how we learn. This is what we want to learn. This is what motivates us to learn. This is what
Right.
we want to eat doing our profession.
Yeah.
I go all the way down. So
Yeah.
now whoever gives that professional development, they're not coming in shooting from the hip. They're coming
Yeah.
in with a detailed request of what you want. And what I found out from my students, I found this out when I was teaching undergraduates, is my students told me that when I did this for them, it demonstrated that I cared about them, right?
Right.
And I
Yeah.
was
I
like,
mean,
go ahead.
no, that I mean, I that would makes me feel the same because when you said professional development, I immediately think I'm not doing it. you know, that's like my first thought that comes to mind. Like I'm not doing that. Especially like at practice, I was always a creature of habit. Like you weren't fitting to tell me that I was gonna do this and this for you. Like no, I'm gonna sit out here and I'm gonna throw like I do normally. Me and my throwing partner, we're gonna throw while we're doing BP. You're not gonna tell me I can't throw during BP because
Hmm.
I'm then it's gonna mess up. What I got going on. It could throw off my vibe for 2 days just being an athlete just because I'm like, well, I can't do it the next day. So then
Right.
it's messed up a routine that you have, and that's. But if somebody walks you through why not to do it, then versus like, hey, just don't do that. But like it was okay 2 weeks before, or 2 days before, it changes. So I appreciate the way you're talking about this and how you go about it.
But think about this. What if your coach came up to you and said, hey, When you perform the best, what do you need to do pregame? What do you need to do specifically? And if they facilitate that, they're
Mm-hmm.
empowering you. And that's what I
Mm-hmm.
do with professional development. I empower. And especially with this generation, the younger generation now, they have to have ownership and empowerment in what they're doing in order to buy in. And that goes to education, and that goes to training, that goes to many aspects of their life. They have to have that empowerment. And what I do is I provide that empowerment. And it ends up
Yeah.
coming off as demonstrating care, which you want to do. You ask people, I don't know if you're married or not. I'm married. You can tell somebody
Yeah.
1,000 times that you love them and you care about them, but it doesn't mean anything unless you demonstrate it.
Yeah, no, that makes sense, and you're empowering. Look, you're giving me spitting game to me right now that I need right now. I coach travel baseball at a pretty high level, so I'm around some guys. And that makes sense though, because anytime that was demonstrated towards me through time, and I always vert back to my career because it was so not long ago, within the last 2 years. So I think about it whenever I go to sales. You're gonna fail, but you're gonna do well. You're gonna do good, and you're gonna fail. Whatever. You got to just keep getting back up. But no, whenever I look back on it like that, anybody that ever said it to me like that always did really well for. And there's those little things you don't know why you play well for somebody or why the things are happening. But myself too, same thing. It's why some kids will perform really well for me, but then they'll go somewhere else and they're terrible, or vice versa. They're terrible for me and they're really well for somebody else. That makes sense. But not everybody's the same. So
Well,
how
well,
have you learned how to figure that out? Like that difference,
well,
how to
guess
come
what?
about
This,
with.
this, 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 I don't believe in coincidence. There's a reason I'm
Yeah.
here today because guess what? I've been coaching for 25 years. I've been
Yeah.
coaching for 25 years. I'm actually getting ready to coach my son's baseball. I'm a baseball coach as well. He plays Little League Baseball here in Richmond,
That's awesome.
Virginia. I'm getting ready to coach his team for the second year. And what
That's
I
awesome.
always tell people is teaching and coaching is the same thing because what you're doing
Absolutely.
is you're trying to motivate and inspire, right? You want to motivate and inspire your students to want to learn, and you want to motivate and inspire your players to want to learn and give 100% effort, 100% energy, 100% of the time. And as a
Hmm.
coach, you have to be very intentional about it. And it goes the
Yeah.
same way in professional development. You have to be very intentional about what you're doing. And I'll give an example. So on Monday, I went to my son's school and they had me doing a presentation for all the second grade classes. And so I'm going around to his classes, and there are a number of kids who played soccer and baseball for me at his school.
Right.
When I walked in that classroom in that teaching role, those are the students that stood out the most. They were engaged, their hands were up, they were trying to help, they were into it because of the impact I had as a coach and
Yeah.
motivating them to want to learn
Hmm.
and that experience. And let me tell you something about you and coaching. Think about it right now. You remember all your coaches.
Every
You
single one of them.
remember them from
I could
when you
probably
were
tell you everybody's name from football, baseball, and basketball for every year until I was in 12th grade.
that's the impact you have as a coach and as an educator, which I am. Think about your teachers. You remember your teachers. You remember the smelly ones. You remember the ones who were late. You remember the ones that were structured. You have memories
Yeah.
of those teachers. And let me tell you why. Because teaching immortalizes you. You live forever. Because some of the things that your coaches taught you, you're passing to the next generation.
Yeah.
Yeah, think about it.
Man.
The good things and the bad things. Some things that you didn't like what they did, you're going to reverse engineer. You're gonna like, I didn't like when they did that, so I'm gonna do it this way. So even with them may have doing something you didn't agree with, you still learn from them.
Man, we preach it. Preaching it right now. I'm getting this for free. Y'all look. Dr. Earl Livingston, y'all can where they find the link at? You get a package from it right now. I'll come talk to you guys and put you on the game. But no, that is awesome though, because I've never really thought about it that way. Obviously, you've got a higher view of it, but I've never really stepped back and really looked at it like that, because that makes a ton of sense. I do remember every teacher. I do remember every coach, and I remember them in that exact same way that you're talking about it. That's to a T.
Yeah.
Like I'm thinking about my favorite teacher right now, and the teacher that was the most troublesome towards us like the whole time. Like she wasn't structured. Always, she fell asleep in class one day and tried to get us all in trouble for it, for telling on her. So
And you remember these things. And so that's why, like I said, I provide professional development for companies, but my focus is on schools and working with
mhm.
teachers. Because like I said, I had somebody, there are a lot of things in business that I'm not the best at. Like,
Yeah,
I had a mentor tell me this one time. My mentor told me, he said, "Hey, because I was worried about accounting, I was worried about the books, I was worried." He said, "Whoa, whoa, 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 whoa." He said, "What do you do?" And I said, "What do he said? What do you do best?" I said,
hmm
"You put me in front of a group of people, and I said, you're about to get a show. I'm an
right,
edutainer." And he
yeah,
said, "That's what you do."
yeah,
He said, "See all that accounting and the marketing and all that other stuff?" He said, "Outsource that to somebody who's an expert at that." He
yep,
said, "An expert at what you're an expert at." And so
right.
that's what I try to do.
Yeah, no, man, that's awesome. But what would you say has been, kind of pivot into a new question, because but what would you say has been your, your favorite part of the journey? Getting into the entrepreneurship side. What would you say has been that part of it? Let's step into the 2018, the present. What's that? What's been that favorite part of the journey?
Freedom, freedom, freedom to say and do what I want, how I want to do it, without the oversight of someone who might not see my vision. Because the thing about your vision is your vision, and somebody won't see the same vision as you. And just because they don't see your vision doesn't mean it's invalid. It just means maybe you can see something they can't.
You're
So the
absolutely
freedom
right.
of it is something that's the freedom is the part that really. I was yesterday I was in CVS, and I heard a guy talking about him working at Wells Fargo for 37 years, and now he's 65 and they're trying to push him out after everything that he gave them over
Mm-hmm.
37 years. And I was like, they tried to push him out before, but now they kind of gave me a deadline and said they're going to get rid of my position. So, now I got to go. Now what's going to happen to him? They don't know his situation, they don't know his health situation, they don't know his financial situation, and he's given everything to them. Why not give that to yourself? Why
Right.
not give that to yourself so someone can't push you out?
Mm-hmm.
You can go out on your own terms. So
Absolutely.
that's my favorite part about it. But listen, but with this entrepreneurial game, it's not easy and it doesn't come easy. And what I always tell people, or what I would tell people, is that whatever it is, I don't care if it's your faith, I don't care if it's your spirituality, I don't care if it's your gym membership, you need something to lean on through the tough times, because there will be tough times, there will be challenging times, and you need to find something to lean on. Mine is my faith. Mine is my faith. I'm a Christian. I'm not afraid to
Mm-hmm.
say it. My
Absolutely.
wife is loves God. That's why I married her, and that
Mm-hmm.
has helped us go through the tough times. And like I said, I don't know if you're married or not. I don't know if you're married or not.
Not yet.
Hey, whenever you get married, number one number one characteristic: this woman loves God. That should be your number
Mm-hmm.
one characteristic, for real, because it
Absolutely.
will. Because with entrepreneurship and the ups and downs and the ebb and flow, listen, I'm in a field. I was in a field that has been completely eviscerated. I was in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space, all right, and that's
Right.
been completely eviscerated for various reasons, and a lot of it is miseducation and misinformation. Because when you say
Absolutely.
those words, diversity, equity, inclusion, you know what diversity means? Everything. It means
Literally
literally
everything.
everything.
Literally everything.
When you hit when you hear equity, equity means giving people what they need to be successful. And when
Mm-hmm.
you hear the word inclusion, that means include everybody. So if you're against DE&I, these are all the things you're against. But that's not
Absolutely.
how it's being positioned. That's not how it's being worded. That's not how it's being centered. It's being centered and promoted as giving people things that they didn't earn. Giving
Mm-hmm.
someone else, instead of me, a position that they
Mm-hmm.
didn't earn.
Oh yeah.
And it couldn't be anything further than the truth. I always ask people this. I say, "Hey, show me the document anywhere that says they have a quota. We need to have this many of this. We need to have this many of this, and we have this many of this.
Right.
Show me the document. Pull me the
Right.
document, and no one can do it because they're
Right.
odd and for things that people don't want.
Yeah.
And listen, there are problems with diversity, equity, inclusion, and one of the major problems is there really isn't a lot of science to it. There's not a major. Like, what are you majoring if you do
Yeah.
diversity, equity, inclusion? What's your major in college? What should it be?
That's
What
a
is
whole
your
that's a
area
broad
within
scale.
diversity, equity, inclusion?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. What is your area within diversity, equity, inclusion? So that's why I had an area. My area was race. I would always ask people when I would consult people, I said, when you bring somebody in, you ask them what their specialty is within that. And if they don't have a specialty, don't hire them because diversity, equity, inclusion is everything. You have to have you need to specialize within that field.
Something.
And yes, something. You need to have expertise in something within that field that you're selling. And like for example, I remember I saw somebody with a government contract, a $12 million contract, and they had a master's degree in counseling. What does that have to do? What is you see what I mean? So there were some things that were problematic with it. Presentation,
Absolutely.
opportunity to be vindictive because they were
Yeah.
hurt and angry and to go after people, and that's not what it's for.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime you teach, you're not there to hurt or embarrass something to your
Right.
perspective. Any learning environment, even the ones when you're coaching those kids, it should be generative. And generative
Absolutely.
means you're learning from them and they're learning from you.
Yep. Because you want to hear their perspective, so you can meet them in
So
the
I'm
middle.
sorry,
That
Mom.
makes sense. That makes sense.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So you would let them kind of talk and let them kind of give you what they thought for you'd probably let that go on. How long would you say let you? How long would it take you to fill out that classroom to where you knew where you could start meeting everybody?
So what I do, and it all depends on the environment.
Right.
Are we talking about a college classroom? All right,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
college
absolutely,
classroom.
absolutely, yeah.
I so this is what I do. I have a method. There is a very intentional thing that I do. The first thing that I do in
Because I
that
had a great
class is
professor at it
anytime
at
you're
my university. That's why I ask. Because you remind me a lot of
okay.
her. So that's why I'm listening. And she taught sports management. She was the overall our sports department. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but yes.
Nah, you good, you good. So the first thing with any great educator is you have to know your students. You have to know who they are. If you don't know who your students are, you don't know who you're teaching, you don't know nothing, you just shooting from the hip. You're not teaching the best way they learn. You're teaching the best way you teach. And it should be the other way around. You should be teaching the best way that the information is going to be received. So the first thing
Right.
that I do is I used to make my students fill out like a index card. They would put down their learning styles on the
Yep.
front of the card, on the back of the card. I wanted to know what motivated them to want to learn, and I wanted to know specifically what do you want to learn in this class. The next week, I would come back and I would put up the learning styles of the class of the group to customize, and I would do a thematic analysis of what motivated them to want to learn and what they specifically want to learn. And whenever it came up in a class, I would have it marked, and they would see me going back to what they were talking about. Then the next thing I did is I had an assignment. It's called a correct. And what I would make them do is write. This is the first assignment I would give them every class. I still do it. Every class I teach, I don't care what subject, this is what you're going to do. It's a 4-day process, right? Where you write a educational autobiography,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so you give them like, you say, hey, it can't be over 8 pages, right? Can't be over 8 pages. It sounds daunting, but I didn't say what the minimum was. I just said what the maximum could be.
Yeah,
So
it
when
could have
you're
been
trying to put together, yeah, go
could
ahead.
have been a paragraph. Could have been a paragraph. You just wanted to see how easy it was for them to express what they were trying to feel.
That and something else. What
You
happens
son of a gun.
is when you're trying to write about when you're trying to write your past, your present, and your future, and you only have 8 pages to do it for 12 years of education, guess what's gonna expose itself? The things that are most important to you. Right? That's what's gonna the things that are most that's what's gonna emerge. And what I found out from students, the things that impact this is what my dissertation is about. What impacted them the most family issues, and transitional moves. What transitional moves mean, either they move states or move schools. Those were consistent among all of the participants. Those are the
Right.
things that really emerge
Yeah.
if they switch, and academic achievement, if they were in, talented and gifted and stuff like that. But those were the things that were consistent within the research. So now that I have this information on them, I read about them. Now I know who they are. I understand
Mm-hmm.
more about them because they've told, without me asking them specifically, they've told me what's important to them. And so
Right.
now that I know what's important to them, it's certain intrinsic knowledge that I have, and I'm learning my students. And it's a very, very concise way of doing it, really, really fast.
Yeah.
It's a, like I said, it's by William Pinar. It's called the Curie process,
The Curray.
and yeah, the Curie,
Hang on.
Curre, the
How do you
Curie.
spell that? I'm about to
Just look up William William Pinar
yep.
Pinar, and look up
Pinar.
Yep, and
Perfect.
look up Curie, Cur. Just it'll come up the Curie process, and that's what I use with my university students. That's like in a business, it's kind of hard to make somebody right, or with teachers, it's kind of hard to make them do this. But when I teach students, I don't care, and you can modify this. You can modify this all the way down to elementary school, where you get to learn about your
Absolutely.
students, and the more and teach and veteran teachers will tell you
Yeah.
the more you know, the key to teaching, know who you have in front of you. And when you know who you have in front of you, I do the same thing for training and PD, but I just do it a different way. I don't make them write. I do surveys with them, and I do focus groups with them to learn that organization, to learn that culture. And once I understand that culture, I'm coming in with what they want. I did one. So it was so funny. I did a professional development at a school in Maryland that I'm working with on a rolling basis. And so they put down what they wanted to eat at this faculty meeting,
Right.
right? I walked in, I bought the food that they said, I put it on the table, it was gone. Less than 5 minutes. I had the principal standing next to me, and I just pointed. He was like, "That's amazing." For everything, there was nothing. The plates, everything was gone. And he
Yeah.
was like, "I said, this is because I asked them what they wanted. I said, hey, what do you want? We want this, and this. There you go." And it's the same thing with the training and how the training is given. Give people what they want, and
Yeah.
they will work for you. That includes
Uh,
baseball as well.
you're dang right, man. Dr. Livingston, thank you so much for coming on with us, man. Tell people where to find you, to reach out so they can, see your work, because we will throw your LinkedIn under. But, if you got anywhere else for them to reach you, let them tell the people.
Well, I'll go ahead and give you my phone number. My phone number is 504-427-4063. And I'm at in-structure.llc.com.
And
And
we will.
hey, I'm looking forward to hearing from your organization. And hey, Ezra, no. I want to thank you for bringing me on here, brother. I appreciate you. I
Yes, sir.
appreciate you reaching out. And look, if there's anything you ever need, if you want to continue this discussion, if there's something that I can provide for you in
Yeah,
any capacity, I got you for real, because you helping me, and I
absolutely.
want to be able to help you too.
Absolutely, man. I appreciate you very much for coming on, man. It's been awesome talking with you. We will keep this conversation going because everything you talk about, I'm super intrigued in. I was actually education major first in school, so yeah, I didn't wind up going through it. I went sports management route
Uh,
because I
it,
wanted to college coach. So I was like, I'd be easier.
so this just so this just happened.
There ain't
This
no
is just
such thing as
serendipitous. This just
coincidence.
happened, huh?
I don't believe in it, brother. I don't
Ah,
believe in it. I'll be in touch with you, but we're gonna throw his socials down below. If y'all have any questions for him, reach out to him. He's a great talk. He's obviously a wealth of resources, and a wealth of knowledge. So give him contact him. And I'm gonna leave it. Last word from you.
hey, everybody, be blessed. And if I could tell you to do anything and something that's helped me even through tough times, somebody told me 3 random acts of kindness per day. 3 random acts of kindness per day. In 3 ways, just be kind to someone. Three random acts of kindness. I don't care if you see somebody and you open the door for them, if you help a lady with her baskets. 3 random acts of kindness per day. Make that your focus, and everything will follow from there.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Thank you so much. Once again, burn the ship, guys.